Hello everyone, today I am back in a Subaru and I am equal parts happy and a little bit uneasy about today. Happy because I'm back in a Subaru. Uneasy because this is going to do absolutely nothing to help me stop missing mine. Now I know I could have bought another Subaru, I sold mine because at the time I needed money, but I decided to go a different route and get my Celica GT4 instead. Now, something I never told you guys is that when I sold my 911, I was looking for something that could replace it, and I thought, you know what, maybe I'll stick with a car that's equal parts fun and practical. I've tried that before. Last time was with my E46 M3, and that was a total disaster, and I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go with a Subaru. And I gotta say, the Subaru Hatch was a car that I actually properly wanted. And it's very unusual for me to say that about a hatchback of any description. And I want to ask you guys something. What's your thoughts on this car? You're about to hear mine, but I suspect if you're a petrolhead type, or indeed a 90s or noughties Japanese rally replica fan, you'll probably have an opinion about the Impreza hatch, or as it later became called, the WRX and yada yada whatever. Now, I always loved the looks of the classic and new age Imprezas. They're beautiful cars and very purposeful. Okay, not the most high-end or fancy or luxurious, but they were cool. And I actually even loved the looks of my own bugger, which I know is the unloved ginger stepchild of the family. And when the hatch came out, I just thought, what have they done? They've ruined it. I mean, it doesn't help that I don't really like hatches at all, and they even stopped doing them in blue and gold. It seems so odd to me. It's like Porsche kind of saying, you know what, we don't think we should do the 911 anymore. It just seemed nonsensical. Now, if you're watching from North America, you probably see Subarus all the time, but in the United Kingdom they are very much a niche choice. I was speaking to a Subaru dealer the other day, and they tell me that apparently Subaru sell in the UK about 3,000 cars a year. That's nothing. And I think this could have been perhaps the beginning of the end for them, because most of the Subaru range doesn't really work in the United Kingdom. They are large, all-wheel drive, nowadays mostly automatic cars, which do absolutely abysmal fuel economy and have pretty low-end interiors. However, the Impreza, none of that really mattered. The Impreza basically made its mark by being that car that gave supercars a hard time for about, well, a third of the money. Here's the thing though, the rest of the world moved on. The Impreza did not. While everyone else was getting more and more power out of their engines, and they were getting quicker and quicker and fancier, Subaru kind of stuck to their guns, and this car's an example of that. The standard WRX came with just shy of 230 horsepower, which is not really any more than they were putting in cars a decade before. Indeed, even the full-fat STI didn't really have any more power than the full-fat STI did a decade before. Subaru haven't seemed to have grasped the concept of when you bring out a newer model, it is supposed to be a bit faster and better than the old ones. And I'm sure they have improved the cars in many ways, but on paper, it's not all that obvious. And this car has a version of the much maligned 2.5 litre boxer motor, combined with the legendarily fragile 5-speed gearbox. Now, the good news, of course, is that that engine and gearbox, when they're working, are actually really quite sweet. And what I'm driving today isn't a standard WRX. It's actually a WRX-S, which, as far as I can tell, was a UK-only model introduced to try and combat some of people's criticisms about the model. This was essentially a newer version of the Prodrive performance pack that was available on the new age cars. So, the main thing that Prodrive did was up the power from just under 230 to near the 260 mark, and gave torque a healthy boost too by about 50 pound-foot up to just shy of about 290. Oddly, those figures are actually still some way short of what the old Prodrive Performance Pack gave the old cars with the same motor. You see what I mean about Subaru just not really moving the game on at all? The other upgrades made by Prodrive include a slightly larger and not bad looking set of 18-inch alloys and the confusingly named STI lip spoiler on the front, which didn't actually come on the STI. And that was it. That was pretty much it. They didn't make any changes to the suspension or anything else so far as I can tell. I did do some digging before I drove this car to see if they did anything like that, and doesn't look like it. And I think it's fair to say that when this car came out, they got an absolute battering by the motoring press. I mean, they were really not loved at all. And that's somewhat reflected in the prices. Now, you can pick one of these up for essentially the same kind of money as a new age STI. So £7,000 or £8,000 will get you in one of these quite happily, and about 10 to 12 will get you in a Hatch STI. And I gotta say, the Hatch STI in particular, with its wider stance and slightly angrier look, is a damn good looking car. But it's a Subaru still, and you'll want to know how it drives. So what I'm going to do is try and magic, through the power of editing, this annoying lorry out of the way, and then we'll see if she still drives like a Subaru should. So far as we know, the only modifications to the car are a K&N air filter at the front, a Hayward and Scott exhaust, which replaces the one that Prodrive put on the car. The Prodrive WRX-S doesn't get the standard exhaust either, but it rusted away, so that's been replaced. And it has a strut brace at the front, and we're not sure if it's been remapped. Now, I haven't put my foot down yet, but I will try and give you as honest an interpretation as I can as whether I think it has or hasn't been remapped. Now seems like a good a time as any to say that I hate the Land Rover Defender. My friend's got one and I was supposed to review it, but it's broken no less than 4 times in the 3 months that he's had it, so I haven't been able to get it on the channel. Have you got a Defender you want me to review? Keep it. The car is indeed very soft. Oh, you can feel it roll around quite a bit. And the steering has that very typical Subaru disconnect. I've got basically no idea what the thing's doing. It's really, really floaty. Like, this is unreal. I don't think I've ever driven anything down here that is quite like this. You can feel it moving around just a little bit. Now, I don't remember my bug eye being this bad. I mean, the car's not slow. I don't think it's really putting out much more power than the 260 that they claim. It's certainly not like a 300 plus car like mine used to be. I mean, the gearbox and the throttle are nice to use. Now, this car also, miraculously, still has cats in it, which is amazing because on nearly every other Impreza on planet Earth, they've sort of accidentally fallen off. Now, this car's currently recorded average fuel economy is 23.4 UK miles to the gallon, which actually is pretty good as far as these things go. WRXs and STIs have never, ever been even remotely good on fuel, which has always been one of the things sort of putting me off having another one as a daily, is the fact that they are abysmal even when you are trying to be good. And in an era when even like a Golf R is going to get well over 30 mpg on a nice cruise, it's not cool. Fuel is expensive here, basically, and this doesn't really have the performance to justify the insatiable thirst that it has either. However, in the 11,000 miles and 3 years that Paul has owned this car, it has actually been very reliable, which is good. It has an issue with third gear synchro, although I haven't yet found that myself. It's been shifting quite nicely. But this is his first performance car, and I can see why he'd want it. It's something a bit different, but it's also practical. If you do want to use it for daily duties or whatever, there is some space in the boot. Not masses, not as much as you might think, because you've got all the all-wheel drive gubbins and the fuel tank and all sorts of stuff going on at the back, so there's not masses of room there, but it is ludicrously comfy. It is the sort of car that, you know, if normal people just got in it, really the big giveaway is that massive scoop at the front, and without that, people would just think it was kind of a normal blue hatchback with gold wheels. And as it happens, although I am generally of the opinion that the only acceptable colour combination for a Subaru is blue with gold wheels, when it comes to the hatches, I've actually got a bit of a thing for them in red as well. I also actually don't even mind them in dark grey, and that is really me abandoning my own principles. I tend to dislike grey or silver cars intently, but I did see a Japanese version of the car, and in the Japanese market they kept the 2-litre engine, which is fully forged from the factory and has a twin scroll turbocharger as well, so it's actually a different sounding car and it revs much higher, so it revs to about 8 grand, whereas this thing's done by about 6.5, so they are a different beastie entirely, and I'd really like to try one of those. In fact, Litchfield themselves did a special version of this. I believe it was the Type 20, or it could be the 25, but I think it's the 20, which was based on the JDM version of the car because they felt it was a lot better. Right, more fun. Yeah, it's a... I mean, it's not slow, but it just... Yeah, I'm having to work this car in a way that I don't think I've really ever worked a car before, because most of the cars that I drive that handle like this don't have this kind of performance or pace.
Yeah.
Under braking you can feel it pitch in. You can still heel and toe nicely with it, or you can hear it scrubbing a little bit there, and that comes with basically no warning. So this is the problem that the car has, because it has that Phoenix Yellow M3, because it has that disconnect. When you're trying to press on, there's no real warning that you're approaching the limit, so you have to basically know what a car should and shouldn't do. And for that reason, I think this would actually be an awful car for somebody with their first performance car, because this is not a car that talks to you. And that's weird, because my Subaru did, my Bug-Eye did, but then my car was very heavily modified, so I suspect that if you're to modify this, you're going to get a lot of that same feeling back, because quite clearly this car is still very much a Impreza underneath. It's still a WRX, so it's still built by the same people. Yeah, it's a weird car, the WRX-S. I was kind of hoping I would love it, and I don't. It's got this weird, doesn't know what it's doing. It's ludicrously comfy, but that does mean it's just a little bit weird to kind of push on with. I wouldn't trust it in tricky conditions, because I think you would just get into trouble with it. But this is an interesting first step in my journey to discover the Impreza hatchback, and the next stage is going to be to try and drive one of these that has been, well, reasonably heavily modified. So that is the Subaru Impreza WRX-S. I can see why it got a bit of a bashing when it came out, and I think that's entirely Subaru's fault, because they needed to move the game on. I think it's very obvious what Impreza WRX owners wanted from a car, and it wasn't a big, soft, comfy hatch. No doubt, in the finest Japanese car tradition, Subaru have given people an excellent base to work from and build something quite special. But the standard car, as it is, I'm not surprised that they had a hard time shifting them. So there you go. That's my thoughts on this car. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all for the next one. Are you a bit of an Impreza fan? Tell me what you think. Or are you an Evo fan? I've never driven an Evo. If you've got one and you'd like me to review it, you're happy to see it on the channel, please do drop me a line. But thanks guys for watching. Please hit the like button, comment below, and we'll see you all for the next one. Bye bye.